Evening. There are two things happening right now in the Nolan Wells case, and together they tell you where I believe this story is right now. So Nolan's family is digging deeper. They have, this is according to reports, subpoenaed CETO records from July 4th and hired audio engineers to analyze the original distress call. Again, reported the subpoena CETO calls, CETO over July 4th calls. Again, so that is on the TMZ as well. And those are the reports, okay? At least one of the reports. So at the same time, lawyers for Warren Hudson, Jax Patalo, and Morgan Seymour have sent Al Sharpton a 19-page pre-suit defamation demand that's accusing them of making statements, or him of making statements that falsely suggested that their clients were involved in Nolan's death or covered something up. Okay, so this is, let me see, this is from the attorney that the producers have given me here. We are serving Al Sharpton with a powerhouse and urgently necessary 19-page pre-suit demand letter. Together with my colleagues and friend J. Tyler Cox, I will hold accountable to the maximum extent of the law all individuals who defame completely innocent young men, Warren Hudson, Jax Patillo, and Morgan Seymour. We will restore their good names without bias, fear, or hesitation. Again, and so I don't know who those people are. He is added Officer Tater here. I don't know who the rest of those people are. Okay, I guess Cox would be someone who works with him, and I don't know who this Sarah is. But anyways, so there you have it. So one side is saying, give us the evidence. The other side is saying, be careful.
An 18-year-old goes to an island alive, comes back in a body bag, and nobody can agree on what happened in between. First, a boat with a broken pump, a distress call, and a question mark in an audio file where people swear they hear everything except what dispatchers claim was said. Second, his family getting serious, hiring audio engineers, subpoenaing records, asking the questions that silence should have answered months ago. Third, the friends offering lawyers instead of answers, threatening lawsuits, and accidentally proving why investigators need to talk. Fourth, Al Sharpton saying things that might be questions or might be accusations depending on who's listening. Fifth, the internet filling every gap with theory, speculation, and the kind of certainty that comes from not knowing. This is the Nolan Wells case as it stands now. Two people can listen to the same tape, hear two completely different things, and both feel certain they're right. Today, we separate what we actually know from what we're all just believing. Nolan Wells was 18 years old. July 4th, 2026, a Saturday, Horn Island, Mississippi. He went out on a boat with friends. The boat had a problem. The valve on that pump stopped working, and water started coming in.
The boat is taking on water. The caller sounds frantic. That's what they say. But he doesn't sound that frantic there. He just sounded sort of, out of it, maybe looking around to figure it out. That didn't really sound frantic. Andy, I don't know. I didn't ask you for the call, but if you have it, find it while I'm doing this and just holler in my ear and let me know. Pardon me for that. So the dispatcher asks whether everyone is on board and okay. And then the answer is, yeah, everyone is on board, okay? But investigators have said that witnesses told them that Nolan was left behind on Horn Island. So that doesn't prove that Nolan was on the boat. It does not prove anybody lied. There were multiple people.
A distress call went out to STO Services, the dispatch for marine emergencies in that area. Somebody on the boat told the dispatcher that the boat was sinking, that they needed help, that they had a membership. The dispatcher asked if everybody was okay.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can y'all please come? We have a membership. Shut up! Shut the fuck up!
Sir. Can you give me a description? Ankles?
What'd you say? Hey.
Yes. How far is the water coming up, sir?
It's coming up. We're just sinking. I don't know. Like we're going down.
All right. Well, let's get you going. Membership number or phone number listed on the account, sir.
I don't know the phone number. It's either. I think it's. Try that.
All right.
I know we have a membership, like guaranteed. I don't have the tag on here. It got ripped off.
Number or anything? It's okay. I'll get you over to the captain. What's the best phone number to reach you at?
Reach me at
All right. And is everybody on board in good health otherwise?
Yeah, everybody's
How
on
many-
board.
The person on the phone said, yeah, everybody's fine. That's what was reported.
In the clip that we all heard, they want original recordings, they want dispatch recordings, they want communications, information about who handled the call.
That's what people focused on. Because if everybody on the boat was fine, and if that person was telling the truth, then where was Nolan? Why did his body show up 2 days later, on a shoreline along the water? Here's what we know from official investigation confirmed across multiple reports. Nolan Wells left the boat. Witnesses have told investigators that he was left behind on Horn Island. The distress call happened around 4 in the afternoon. By evening, a search started. By the next day, the Coast Guard was involved. 2 days later, on Monday, his body was recovered. What killed him? That hasn't been confirmed. The official cause isn't public yet. What we know is that he was young, he was in the water, and he was dead. Everything else is what people are trying to figure out. And they're fighting over how to do it. The dispatch recording became the focal point. Almost immediately, people online started listening to it. They started claiming they could hear specific things in that audio. His name, somebody asking if he was dead, details that would prove whatever theory they already believed. The dispatcher, from what's documented, asked everyone on board in good health otherwise. The response was yeah. That's the fragment people focused on. Does that mean Nolan was on the boat?
And what happened around it, that call? Good, okay. Because social media has turned that audio into a Rorschach test. People swear that they hear Nolan's name. Others swear they hear someone asking whether somebody is dead. Other people hear nothing close to that. I say enough guessing here.
No, it doesn't prove that.
So, look, that doesn't prove anything that people are saying, well, it meant that Nolan was on board, nothing like that. But it creates a question. And when an 18-year-old disappears and turns up, dead 2 days later.
It's also not proof that he wasn't. It's a recording from a stressful situation with multiple boats, multiple people, confusion, and the kind of information gaps that happen when people are panicking. But here's what matters. The family, Nolan's family, they didn't accept the gaps. They started moving. They issued subpoenas, documented requests for all the original materials from that STO call. Every dispatch recording, every communication log, every piece of documentation about how that call was handled. They hired audio engineers, people with actual credentials, to listen to the recording and tell them what's actually there, not what armchair analysts on social media claim they hear.
Give the original audio to qualified experts and let them tell us what is actually there and what is not there and what cannot be determined. Now, I'm sure the audio engineer, the audio technician person before was qualified, but it's not part of the official investigation. So put it into the official record and have it be part of the investigation. This is also why I think this lawsuit threat.
That's documented. That's what's happening right now. They want the original audio, not the versions that have been copied and recopied online. They want experts to analyze it. And they want the answers that should have come from official investigation by now. Here's the media literacy part. When investigators don't communicate, when official channels stay silent, when there's no timeline and no updates, the space gets filled. People make up what they think happened. They hear what they want to hear in audio recordings. They see patterns in absence. They connect dots that might not connect. This is documented psychology. This is how myth develops. Not because people are stupid, but because silence creates a vacuum, and humans are pattern-matching animals. We fill blanks, we have to. It's how we make sense of the world. But sometimes what we're sensing isn't truth. It's just our own need for resolution. The friends of Nolan, 3 young men who were on the boat, they've now hired attorneys. Those attorneys sent a 19-page letter to Al Sharpton, the reverend who's been speaking publicly about the case. They claim Sharpton defamed their clients, suggested they were involved in Nolan's death or covered something up, made statements that were false. The letter is threatening legal action.
Break into your day and try and pray and give strength to this family. Let me thank Attorney Ben Crump, who's worked tirelessly. I've been told that one of the people that was with Nolan has been online watching this. If you want to come forward, call us. I'll get you an attorney. I'll pay for your attorney of your choice. We just want the truth. You don't, if you have nothing to really be concerned about, then you should step forward. All these parents have said from the beginning is they want the truth. So if you want to join in on what we're seeking, you're welcomed. We don't have to slip and slide here. We just want the truth about a young man who we should be celebrating his birthday today. Let me thank all of you that took time.
Okay, so there you go. So I don't know.
It's demanding an apology, a retraction, and deletion of statements. Sharpton's response, documented, was public. He said he welcomes the lawsuit. He said if they sue, there will be depositions.
See what happens.
And one more
Yeah, go
thing.
ahead.
So as we've already said, and as was in the report, Sharpton said, I welcome this. And one of the reasons why he welcomes it, he said it at the National Association of Black Journalists the other week. He said, listen, you sue me, that means there is going to be a deposition. We know, and when you get deposed, that everything will come out in court, right? You cannot hide it. And so part of the thing that Sharpton is saying there is, I welcome this because I want all of this to come out in court to prove that if something happens to Nolan, and if you are saying you know more than what you are saying currently, then prove it.
He said everything will come out in court. He said he wants that. He said he wants the truth. And he said a lawsuit is how you get there. Now, here's what matters about this legally, and what matters about this in terms of what actually happened. These young men have not been charged with anything related to Nolan's death. That's documented. Official investigators have not said they caused his death. They deny wrongdoing. Their lawyers say they've been falsely accused.
These young men, if these are indeed the name of the people who are in this thing, besides I know Warren is the one, they have not been charged with anything to do with Nolan's death. They've been charged with killing Nolan Wells at all. No, they have not. Authorities have not said that they caused his death. They deny wrongdoing, and their lawyers say that they have been falsely accused. Okay. That matters, but if investigators are not, okay. That matters, but asking questions about inconsistencies, timelines, and evidence is not the same as accusing someone of unaliving somebody. It's not the same thing. Asking questions about it, reporting that people are saying these things, that's not exactly accusing somebody of the big M word. You know, YouTube is got to be careful about saying those things. Sometimes it picks it up, sometimes it doesn't. So if Sharpton crossed a legal line, lawyers can fight that out. But a defamation dispute does not answer what happened to Nolan.
All of that is true, and all of that is on record. But, and this is where the media literacy matters again, there's a difference between accusing someone of something and asking questions about inconsistencies.
What does the timeline show? And the thing is, what can the audio engineers establish? Right? Because people don't know. You may, look, as the attorneys or someone who's outside of the official investigation, you can say all this stuff, but it's still not part of the official investigation.
Sharpton, from the documented statements, asked questions.
It also cites a July 14th TMZ appearance where Sharpton made references to the, quote, 3 young white male friends. And so the letter is claiming that he is insinuating that they had something to do with his death, with Nolan's death. And in that TMZ interview, Sharpton basically questioned why Wells would have left his phone behind. That is a question that has been on many people's minds. They're wondering why, with in 2026, when not just someone who is a teenager, but a lot of us are constantly have our phones. Well, the attorneys and Nolan's friends have said, listen, he didn't want his phone to get wet, right? That's why he left it on the boat. And then there was nothing nefarious there. It's just he didn't want it to get wet. So that's why there's been that conflicting side. But Sharpton has said, I don't know if I buy that story. He also said one friend initially denied having the phone and the keys. And he also insinuated that the phone's contents may have been erased. And so he's simply saying there are too many unanswered questions for something to not have happened. But he has never really said that these boys did something nefarious or said they murdered Nolan, but the letter is just saying, hey, you have insinuated that.
He said the timeline doesn't add up. He said the phone being left behind doesn't make sense to him. He said these are questions worth asking. That's not the same as saying he murdered anybody. But the lawyers are saying it amounts to that. They're saying it's defamation. They might be right. A court will decide. But a defamation dispute that doesn't tell us what happened to Nolan. What it does tell us is that information is being fought over. The family wants answers, so they're getting experts. The friends want their names cleared, so they're threatening lawyers. Al Sharpton is raising questions in public. The investigation is still official and still documented. But what's actually moving, what's actually creating forward momentum is everyone except the investigators themselves. That's the pattern. That should concern people. Not because anyone is definitely guilty, but because nobody is getting clear answers, and in that void, accusations are going to keep multiplying. The subpoenas the family issued, they're specific.
Yeah, I mean, good evening, Don. It certainly has. We know that there's now that pre-lawsuit that is coming from the friend's attorney, but I'm going to first focus on the fact that last week, it happened on Thursday. We know Nolan's mom, Christine, filed 2 subpoenas on Thursday, one for Cito Services International and a separate one for Ward Marine Services, basically both of those companies that operate the Cito, Mississippi, one that is the international, kind of the big firm, and then one that's just Mississippi focused. So for Cito, she wants everything that's related to July 4th. So basically calls, recordings, dispatch records, anything that showed the response and what happened on July 4th. She's also asking for training materials and any written procedures for handling reports of boats that are taking on water. She wants to know, again, we know that the friends there have said, hey, our boat was taking on water because of the valve was broken. And so she's saying, okay, if that's the truth, then I want to know, how would someone respond to that? And what are the protocols for handling that style of a phone call? Now, that is for the Cito. For the Ward Marine, that's the actual Mississippi one, she's going even further. That she says she wants everything tied to that incident, including dispatch calls and communications between the captain, local crew, and anybody that's connected to the boat that Nolan was on. She also wants any communications about that incident and any records that show whether any of them changed or ended Cito's response. So she issued that subpoena last week, calling for all of that information related to the July 4th incident, as, again, she's just looking to find out what happened to her son.
They want to know how the STO system works. They want to know what procedures exist for handling calls about boats taking on water. They want to know who handled Nolan's call specifically, what training those people had, what they recorded, what the original dispatch notes say. This is how you investigate something properly. You don't guess at audio files. You don't make up theories about what happened. You pull records. You examine procedures. You ask people under oath what they know. The family is doing the work that investigation should have done already. Here's a detail that doesn't get covered much in typical media coverage of this case. The STO system, the dispatch service, it operates within specific legal requirements. There are federal regulations about how dispatch is conducted, what has to be recorded, what has to be logged, how long it has to be kept. Those regulations exist specifically so that in situations like this, when somebody dies under unclear circumstances, you have a complete record. You have evidence. You don't have guessing. The family is demanding to see those records. That's within their rights. That's also the route to actual answers. The question I want to pose to you, and I want you to think about this, is this. If multiple boats were present, if there was confusion, if the dispatcher's first question was answered by someone other than someone on the boat Nolan was on, wouldn't that explain the discrepancy everyone's been fighting over? If the person who answered the dispatcher was on a different boat, or if they were answering without complete information, if communication between boats was incomplete, wouldn't that explain why the answer didn't match what happened? And if that's true, does that tell us anything about what happened to Nolan? or just about why the recording is ambiguous? That's what I'm asking you to sit with. That's the kind of question that the full records might answer. The timeline matters here too. 4 p.m., distress call, evening, search begins. But when exactly did people realize Nolan was missing? How long before official search started? Who noticed first? What did they know at what time? These details, they're documented somewhere. They're unofficial reports. Investigators know them. The family subpoenas are designed to pull those out. Because if the timeline shows that nobody knew Nolan was in trouble until hours after he went into the water, that's a different story than if people knew immediately and didn't search effectively. Both would be tragedies. Both would require explanation, but they're different explanations. The legal threat against Sharpton, that also tells us something about where information is being contested. If these young men are completely innocent, if their lawyers have documentation that proves they did nothing wrong, if investigators have cleared them, then why respond with threats? Why not just release the documentation? Why not say, here's what we have, here's what we know, here's why the allegations are false? The fact that they're threatening lawyers suggests they don't have complete clarity either. Or they do, and they're protecting privacy, or they don't trust the process. All of those are possible. But each one changes what the legal threat actually means. What happens next is what matters most. The family is moving forward with expert analysis. The lawyers are proceeding with their defamation threat. The investigation is ongoing, officially quietly. The public narrative is fractured between what people claim to hear in an audio file and what's actually documented. The gap between those two things is where this case lives right now. That gap is where myth is being born. That gap is also where the truth is being hidden, whether deliberately or just through the natural accumulation of silence and confusion. The broader pattern here across true crime coverage and real cases is this. When official investigation doesn't communicate, when there's no timeline released, no updates, no clarity on what's known and what isn't, private citizens and media start filling that space. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes they find things investigators missed. But sometimes they create false narratives. They convince themselves they hear things in audio that aren't there. They pattern match too hard. They decide someone is guilty because it satisfies their need for resolution. That's not a crime. That's just being human. But it can destroy innocent people, and it can also protect guilty ones buried under so much noise that real evidence doesn't matter anymore. What we should be watching is simple. The audio analysis. The subpoenaed records. The official investigation's next moves, and very carefully, the legal fight between Sharpton and these young men, because that fight is going to surface evidence that might not come out otherwise. Lawsuits create depositions. Depositions mean people have to answer questions under oath. That's where truth often lives in situations like this. For now, Nolan Wells is still dead, and the documented facts are still limited. His family is asking questions the investigation should have answered. His friends are protecting themselves. The media is covering the fight instead of the case. And the public is left guessing at audio files and making up narratives. That's where we are. Follow the documentation. Wait for the expert analysis. Pay attention to what the subpoenaed records show. And remember, the absence of an answer is different from proof of guilt. It's just absence. Eventually, it gets filled. The question is whether it gets filled with evidence or with whatever story people needed it to be.